ready?
Got open man. DJ Moore. End zone. Touchdown. Touchdown Bears.
I am Jeff Joniak.
Blitz is on. Down he goes. Oscar.
What was it like playing for Coach Ditka?
I don't want to answer any questions like that.
Pressure coming. He's in big trouble. Down he goes. Montez Sweat.
And
Now, Bears Etc., brought to you by Miller Lite with the voices of the Bears, Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer.
Well, there is some really palpable momentum building at Hallis Hall these days as the coaching staff fills out with a blend of significant experience and youth with branches from many trees in the National Football League. And in the end, this is going to be a new Bears tree with a confluence of concepts and strategies unique to the franchise for 2025 and beyond. With Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. Episode 131 of the Bears Etc. podcast is brought to you by Miller Lite. Good to be back with you each week here in the offseason until we get rolling again. And it is coming fast, Tom. How you feeling? Number one, off knee replacement surgery.
I feel good. I'm ready to roll. They did a great job. I think whenever you have a tough beginning to a week, but you always know you're waiting for that 5:30 Central starting time of a Super Bowl, you're envious, you're jealous, but you're excited as well. So I think I always have my sights set on doing the podcast, seeing what's new in the next day of Bears football, watching the Super Bowl, and then it's pretty much Bear focus after that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we have the luxury of paying attention to the Super Bowl, but the luxury after that is paying attention to Bears football.
Yeah, and it's going to come swiftly. Combine's coming up here in a couple weeks, and so a lot of talk about that. Free agency will kick in, all that, and everybody's got ideas. Ideas are floating everywhere. Tommy, with each passing day, there's more good news pouring into the franchise in terms of the coaching staff. The position coaches, some have been announced, some have not been announced. It's going to be a situation now where it's reportedly. So we're talking about a lot of different experiences here, different experiences in terms of where people have been on defensive side of the ball, the offensive side of the ball, and we're going to hear from one of those coaches, offensive coordinator Declan Doyle. Overall, before we get into any details, what is your impression of the mix? Is the mix important to you of the age and experience and the youthful influence as well?
Of course it is, but you know, my interest is where they came from. Where is their foundation lied? Who is the biggest influences in their football life since they have an opportunity to have a job of such importance of getting this Bear team turned around? And whether it's a ex-player background or if it's the difficulty of climbing the coaching ladder in the NFL, but all the lessons you learned in your past, I think that's what I'm most encouraged and most excited about. And when you have people calling Ben Johnson one of the most talented play callers in the NFL at this stage of his career, the staff that he's putting together, and we all know what Dennis Allen has done in his past, and we know a lot about Richard Hightower. I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Tom, I'm calling it a staff with substance. Would you say that's a fair representation?
100%. Of course. It's a staff with substance because, like we mentioned, is the ladders that they had to climb if they didn't have playing in their background. But then if you have playing in your background, everything you are able to learn and how you can transfer that information to the playing groups that you're coaching. Listen, I'm super excited because we're not only talking about a coaching staff, we're talking about a coaching staff that comes to a team that has a franchise quarterback in place. And when is the last time throughout the course of the off seasons that, whether we had a podcast or not, that we're talking about having a franchise quarterback in place? It doesn't come with that great of frequency. So I'm excited to see how all these pieces fit in place with substance.
And that is also a fair representation of Tom Thayer. Pieces fit together and a man with substance, because our aches and pains or injuries keeping you on the sidelines, Athletico's movement experts are here to help you turn your setbacks into comebacks and create a personalized game plan for your recovery. With no prescription or referral needed, Athletico Physical Therapy is where your comeback story begins. Athletico is proud to be the official physical therapy partner of the Chicago Bears, a longtime partner. We welcome him into the podcast. As an ex-player, you're a little bit like Humpty Dumpty, right? You need things over the course of your life. You've already had hips, knee, you've had back surgeries in the course of your career. What is the best advice you can give players when they end their careers and move into their post-professional life. As you get older, you're going to have aches and pains regardless if you played sports or not. And if you played sports, you're guaranteed to have something. You played in the trenches for 10 or 11 years at the NFL level, not to mention your high school and college experiences.
Don't become bored and stationary. Find something that activates your mind and in your system. Find something that you're excited about attacking every day. Whether it's getting back into the weight room without the responsibilities of being in there as an active football player, what can you do to put that as an enjoyable experience to go to the weight room? What is going to light your system on fire? And for me, and I know it's not for everybody, it was surfing, because surfing put that same feeling in the pit of my stomach that pulling up to a stadium on the day of a game did. But for somebody, some way, shape, or form, there is that element of excitement that can happen for every single ex-player out there.
I know you don't want to talk about you. I know you're uncomfortable with that, but I'm going to pose this to you. You know, that lure of the ocean and the board, and you've adjusted over the course of your life to, you know, the long board and paddle board. Would you now be able to do this here in the coming months again? Will your body allow it, do you believe?
Yeah. You know, the thing about it, what I like most about it is the fear I have when I go back into the ocean for the first time of being in the Midwest, then I go have a chance to go back out to Hawaii. There's times out there that my knees are shaking as if I was facing Reggie White. And I think that's the healthy part of it, because once you lose that pulling up to the stadium on the Sunday of a game, whether you're on a team bus or you're in your own car, it's hard to find that nervousness again. That's a healthy nervousness. And so that's what surfing has done for me. And that's why I recommend it to anybody. You know, I mean, it could be getting into a cooking contest, getting into a golf tournament, getting to pickleball, whatever the case is, because a lot of times you and I talk to ex-players that have been out of the game for 30 years, and now they're into this whole pickleball thing, and they're excited about it, and they want to talk about it, and they're on their feet, and they're working hard. And so whatever is going to get you up off the chair and on your feet, take advantage of it.
Well, a guy like you who's fidgety, you need to be active. Otherwise, you're not going to be happy, right?
As so do you.
Yeah.
Don't blame it all on me. You're as fidgety as I am.
For savings and service, get more with Geico. All right, let's listen into our interview with new offensive coordinator Declan Doyle. Welcome.
Thank you.
How does this feel? How does Chicago Bears feel?
Feels good. Yeah, excited to be here and excited to be a part of it.
And what about the history? You roll in here, George Halas statue greeting you. I mean, do you embrace that?
You know, growing up in the Midwest, obviously very aware of the history of the Chicago Bears and kind of the weight of that and the fan base and all that, and it's pretty surreal. You walk in here and it's what brings you to a place like this.
Right, because not every franchise has it.
Totally.
Some do.
Totally.
A lot don't.
Yep.
Relationship with Ben Johnson, how did that all come about?
Yeah, so funny story. 3 years ago, I actually interviewed for the tight end job in Detroit, and I was an offensive assistant in New Orleans. I went in and I had worked for Dan Campbell in New Orleans, like directly underneath him, and so I felt good about the situation and kind of going in there. Did the interview. Ben kind of led it. That was going to be his first year as a coordinator, and I felt like I did well. You know, I'm looking around at the room, and I'm like, I think that, you know, the rest of this room is going to feel like I got this job. Ben was very challenging to interview with, and I was like, I think that guy doesn't like me. So I actually left the room, and I was like, I think everybody in this room would say, like, hey, you know, this guy should be the guy, except for Ben. I was like, Ben, I think he hates me. He actually reached out to me. You know, I ended up not getting the job. He reaches out to me, you know, shortly after that, and we kind of got together at the combine and had some coffee, and we've maintained a relationship since then. Obviously have followed him in Detroit and watched the success that he's had. Certainly somebody that I'm really, really excited to work directly with, but really just kind of had that, like, you know, a little bit of a mentor relationship from the side, stayed in contact, and obviously very excited for his opportunity here as well when I found out he was coming here.
Well, you obviously said something right in that interview,
yeah.
right? Maybe not right then, but you definitely did. How would you describe Ben?
Ben is very detailed, smart. He's intentional with the way he talks to people. He has very, very little ego when I talk to him. I feel like I'm talking to a peer, even though he may be one of the best play callers in football right now. You know, I think that he is driven by the right things, and that is the relationship with the people, players, the other coaches, when I look at Ben, he's somebody that I looked at even, after interviewing with him 3 years ago, and I looked at him as, it's hard to find mentors in this business, and you look at him and you're like, I want to be like that guy. Just really, really excited to be here with him.
Does that make the collaborative process easier then for you because you've been looking up to this guy in a sense?
I think so.
You guys are also smart guys, both of you. Do you make this offense then a reflection of?
I think the offense is a reflection of all of us.
Yeah.
Ben certainly, the players, and then the staff that's going to be assembled. It kind of becomes, all of ours put together, and we're certainly very early in that process, and we'll start to hammer out that work. I'm really excited to work with him, and I think the collaborative process is going to be great.
How would you describe your philosophy?
We didn't talk a ton about, what he believes or what I believe. I believe that, the offense has to be physical, and it starts with being physical up front, physical with the ball in your hands, a violent run-after-catch team, being one of the best perimeter blocking units in football. I think that that's really going to be important with, establishing who we are here. I believe in, an offense that's very detailed. You're always trying to attack the 11 brains on defense. You're trying to attack the defensive coordinator, find ways to stress them and figure out the rules and then stress the rules. And, that was something I was exposed to around Coach Payton, obviously, in New Orleans and Denver. And it's why you stay up all night, trying to figure out, how are they going to defend us and what can we do to, make their lives a little bit more challenging. And then lastly, you got to find ways to be explosive. You got to find ways to get the ball to your best players in space and put your players in position to have success, whatever that may be. And Ben said it. He said, this isn't a drop the playbook and just recreate what he did in Detroit. It's got to be based around the players. It's got to be based around the personnel that you have. And I think that, over the next, 6 months and into this first season, we're going to kind of see, what that is and who we want to be.
You're in Sean Payton's backyard, grew up in Naperville,
Yeah.
just west of here, right?
Yeah.
How would you describe that experience?
With Sean?
Yes.
I would say that transformational is how I would say. He is somebody that has had a huge impact on my life. He's pulled me from relative anonymity twice. He gave me my first job in the NFL when I was 22 years old. I had coached at Iowa for 3 seasons as a student and kind of done some work there. And Joe Brady left and he went to LSU. And so that job opened up and I was able to interview for it and I got it. I spent 4 years in New Orleans, 3 under Sean. That was outstanding. I mean, I describe that. I have a middle brother who went to Harvard and I describe that as, my Harvard experience, earning a PhD in football. Then moving forward, Sean goes to Denver and I'm able to go with him. He elevated me and allowed me to be a position coach. But I have so much respect for Coach Payton and, what he built in New Orleans and then, what he's beginning to build in Denver. Obviously, being able to be there for the beginning of it was a really special thing.
All right, so your experience with Bo Nix.
Yeah.
We spring up Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
What is the key in developing a young quarterback, in your opinion?
First and foremost, it's about the processing ability, fitting the offense to the player. And so I would describe that the quarterback is a processor. There are physical tools that are required to do the job, but he's the leader of the offense. He is the processor. And if you look at a phone, okay, the computer processor behind that, Drew Brees was an iPhone 25 when I was there. Okay, he was way beyond. I think the most important thing is you fit it and don't ask the guy to do anything that is beyond him yet. I think it's a process. I think all of that is earned. And I think, we got to do a really good job of fitting this thing to him. It was the same with Bo. When Bo came in, we had to shape it around him and his skill set. Caleb has a very unique skill set that's different than Bo's. And so it's going to be about evaluating, how he plays and then being able to build in schemes and ask him to do things and with the operation that are going to fit him.
Still yet to come. What else is on the roster, but are you intrigued with the talent at the skill positions?
Yes, very much so. Obviously followed DJ Moore while he was in Carolina and saw a ton of crossover tape when I was in New Orleans. He's somebody that I've admired from afar. Coaching the tight end position, Cole Kmet, very impressive. He's somebody that probably hasn't, he's a little bit, overlooked, I would say. He absolutely has value in both the run and the pass. Huge fan of him and from afar. Obviously Rome, very talented. The backs, you get Swift and some of those guys. There's a ton of pieces here that are really exciting.
I didn't know about this. They told me to ask you. There were Twitter reports that you were related to Mike Ditka.
Yeah, I saw that.
Is this true?
That is not true. what an honor that would be. I saw that my brothers actually sent me kind of the side-by-side, and I could see the resemblance, but no, I am not related to Mike Ditka.
All right, one of the first things that stick out is the tailoring of the offense around Caleb's strengths. And Caleb is quoted as saying as much over the course of his post-Ben Johnson hire that, it's going to be an offense built around my strengths, something that suits me, and then built it out from there. How important is that?
Got it. First of all, you have to do the evaluation of what you consider the strengths of the quarterback that you're going to get ready to work with. Then you got to think about the pieces you already have in place and how that system mentally and physically can fit that quarterback into the rest of the players on the team. And I'm glad one thing about Declan in his interview with you, he didn't just have a complete answer. I think there was a question that you asked him. He didn't give you an answer. And I like that because it is not that clear cut. There's so much evaluation, so much studying, so much time to consideration of the different assets you have and how you're going to use them. And then you think of the tree that he grew up with, between Ben Johnson, between Sean Payton. And it wasn't an obvious hire the first time he met Ben Johnson, but Ben Johnson was impressed by what he showed him as a young person, and then being involved in coaching since he's been 22 years old.
Right.
My gosh, we won the Super Bowl when I was 24 years old. And I think of a guy, 2 years younger than me at that point, already being involved in coaching. Man, there's so much you can learn on your way up that coaching ladder.
Yeah. He says he's already had a decade of some sort of coaching experience, and that question was what was going to be the message to the fans who've been thirsting for an offensive,
right.
And he goes, no, get to work. And that seems to be the philosophy here. You mentioned trees, too. We talk about it all the time. And just going through all the offensive hires, some have not been officially announced, but you talk about a few that already have. Dan Campbell, Sean Payton, Andy Reid, Doug Peterson. That's just to name a few. So what I get out of that, though, is the impact of the running game, a power running game, ball control. Obviously, the ball is going to be in the air with a quarterback like Caleb Williams. But, Ben Johnson he said he values the impact of a running game. I'm thinking efficient offense, run game. What do you think when I throw all those names at you? Because they're all linked in some way.
I mean, there's a variety of different types of influences and all the background of every one of those guys. But I think the importance of a running game in football is what dictates the variety of things you can do on the offensive side of the ball, because you can't run play action passing that is super deceptive if you can't run the ball, because the opponent gives you no respect. So if that is your number one priority, then that is going to be the foundation of your offense, and that's the first thing you're going to install to have all the other elements within an offense. And then when you talk about guys like Cole and DJ and Rome and DeAndre and all the other guys that you can mention, Roshan and stuff, you have to have that base. You have to have that one element that is going to be the ignition switch to your offense. And so when you think about the priority of the running game with a guy like Dan Campbell, you think the variety of the passing game with Andy Reid and where he came from, the Lavelle Edwards system. And you think of a guy like Sean Payton.
That's Bill Parcells.
Yeah. And how you amass all those varieties of the elements of successful offensive football, and then how you kind of gather them and then put them into one system that best suits Caleb and the rest of the weapons they have here. If you make offensive running the ball your priority, you're going to open up a lot of other windows of success.
And then you go back, Andy Reid being on that Green Bay staff. Andy was with Mike Holmgren. I mean, they ran the football too. Despite all those they ran the football.
But so Andy Reid was an offensive tackle at BYU when Jim McMahon was the quarterback. There was a game where Jim McMahon threw the ball 73 times. So as much as Andy Reid has been able to take quarterbacks throughout his career and never lose sight of the importance of the running game, but always having a variety of attacks for the passing game, it does go back to his foundation. But even though the foundation was throwing the ball, the foundation is really running the ball.
What impact and role can Declan Doyle play in helping craft the game plan and help craft the scheme that the Bears are going to put together, heavily influenced, of course, with Ben Johnson's background, and in particular in protection, because all these coaches, they all value getting rid of the football quickly and avoiding sacks. That's instrumental.
Well, I think it's the variety of information you already have at your disposal with all the film of every one of the games from this past season that Caleb has already played in. Now, if you're just right there now taking the draft in consideration and see what quarterback you're going to draft, and then you got to kind of feel him out a little bit and see how he digests the information that you're feeding him every day. You can go back and you can look at game 1 to game 17 and look at the improvements that Caleb has made throughout the season. So now you can take your own background and you can say, okay, this is what he really does well. This is where his athleticism fits my system the best. This is what he can do to make sure that he can move safeties or move defensive backs around the field with his eyes. And then even when Declan says, look, we have a real asset here in Cole Kmet, and we're going to be able to use him in a variety of ways, and he's going to be a part of our offensive package. That's one thing that he's already recognized just by what he's seen. But having that information at his disposal of Caleb is probably the most important element to expedite the installation of this offense.
For savings and service, get more with Geico. And this podcast is brought to you by the official beer partner of your Chicago Bears. Taste like Miller Time, Chicago. Go to MillerLite.com/BearsPod to find delivery options near you. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. One other thing, Bo Nix, whom Declan Doyle worked with, obviously, on that offense as the tight ends coach in Denver with Sean Payton, sacked just 24 times last season. So that's a guy who got rid of the football quickly. So that's something to keep an eye on how that fits with the Bears. He was an offensive assistant in New Orleans 4 years, 3 under Sean Payton, and 1 under the Bears defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen, who was the head coach of the Saints the last 3 years and former Raiders coach from 2012 to 2014. So valuable resources here. That's what we can keep talking about. A lot of valuable resources, including from a defensive coordinator for the head coach.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because it just brought a thought back in mind. Because when you talk about the analogy of Drew Brees, and he says, Drew Brees is an iPhone 25, a smartphone 25. And that's almost incapable for a lot of us that have been around in football to just think how intelligent and how developed he was mentally in the game of football. But now you go the opposite end of the spectrum. You have an iPhone 25 to a modern, up-to-date iPhone when you talk about a young quarterback they had in Denver and what you have in Caleb. So now you're trying to see what can the end result be of a quarterback when you install this information over a period of time. So I think you kind of have a chance to look at the big picture of what a quarterback can be, having the experience of being around Drew Brees. And look how it starts when you have a chance to be around a couple rookie quarterbacks. So I think that experience right there is as valuable as anything that you can ever learn in football.
All right, so reportedly the Bears are hiring on the offensive line Dan Roshar with Tulane 23 to 24, but a decade with the Saints. He's a Northern Illinois grad, worked with Drew Brees at a key time when that offensive line was one of the best in the NFL. So we're going to get to learn more about him. There's a lot. He's got 40 years of coaching experience, Tommy.
I've already talked to a couple of offensive line coaches around the NFL that know a lot about him. And the glowing remarks that they said about him, his work ethic, his attention to details in terms of fundamentals and techniques is super encouraging. So without ever having met him, I'm excited about what I hear from other experienced NFL offensive line coaches that brag about the quality of coach he can be, because we're not going to fool anybody. The improvements that need to be made on this football team are from the inside out. And if you can take the talent and develop this offense and defensive line, you're talking about, like Ben Johnson said, we're here to win immediately, and you're talking about competing for a division year one.
Could be a major title shift just because the offense and defensive line improve and become more productive and efficient, correct?
100%. And the experience to get into the mind of these offense and defensive linemen, complement the offseason with the weight room and then bring it on to the competitiveness of the practice field. It's going to be interesting to watch the competition, especially when you bring in a new position coach and how all these guys try to earn their stripes.
For savings and service, get more with Geico. And as Chicago's hometown team for over 125 years, Jewel Osco's grocery game remains strong as they continue to deliver weekly savings on family favorites. You can also count on Jewel Osco for hot digital deals, convenient drive-up and go services, and more. All right, let's talk Super Bowl. So many interesting angles here, but I'm going to start with not the quarterbacks, Tom, which is always the case. Jalen Hurts of Philadelphia, of course, Patrick Mahomes of Kansas City. This is going to be Steve Spagnuolo, the outstanding defensive coordinator, outstanding in the playoffs annually for Kansas City, and Vic Fangio, our old friend here from the Bears, is the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator. The game plans that they're going to come up with, I just can't wait to watch what they have in store for these two offenses. I'm going to begin there. How do you look at that matchup?
I really like the defense of the Philadelphia Eagles. I think when you look at where they start, it is up front. They have players that have been healthy and playing a good brand of football all year. And they have guys coming back for the Super Bowl that have been on the injured list now for a few weeks. So when I think of Vic Fangio and what he's capable of doing, I do think that he can challenge the offense of the Kansas City Chiefs. But Spagnuolo, he is a good football coach, and there's no doubt about it. However, now when you're playing in a neutral atmosphere, you don't have that crowd noise of Kansas City to make your offensive line dysfunctional. And then when you look at the offensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles, even though they're banged up a little bit, I think it evens out that match a little bit. And so I think both defensive coordinators are going to have to be creative. They're going to have to figure out where their best matchups are lie. When you have a guy in Kansas City like Chris Jones, you can really do a lot with them and take advantage of what you perceive as maybe a weakness on the offensive line, just like with Jalen Carter. You can do the same thing with him on the defensive line. And where do you perceive to be a vulnerability on the offensive line, then attack it.
Yeah, well, I'll make Chris Jones and Jalen Carter run sideways as much as possible in the run game, and I'll get them plumb tuckered out because that may be the only way you run the football successfully or get the offense going. But will the Eagles run Saquon Barkley away from Chris Jones, and will the Kansas City offense run the ball away from a guy like Jalen Carter?
Well, when you have a guy like Chris Jones and you have a guy like Jalen Carter, it's not necessarily that they have to make the tackle, but they can cut the field in half. And so if you have a running game that maybe have a little bit misdirection, a little creativity, a little RPO, and if you have a guy like Chris Jones or Jalen Carter that can dominate the point of attack and get pressure upfield into the backfield, now you make the running play one-dimensional. And so now you got 10 guys chasing the point of attack because of you have the assets of one guy like that.
And the matchups, there's so many. Eagles receiver A.J. Brown against Kansas City's Trent McDuffie. They play a lot of man coverage, press coverage, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. And then the two tight ends. Dallas Goedert against a Kansas City defense allowing the most receiving yards to a tight end in the NFL this season. And Travis Kelce, 184 targets, nearly 7.5 catches per game in his postseason life, 19 touchdowns and 97 first downs. And according to the Next Gen Stats, leads all NFL players in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns on scramble plays, which Mahomes is great at since 2018. We're talking about a season that would be worthy of very good attention if it was just one season, but this is since 2018. 61 catches, 933 yards, and 10 touchdowns. What do you think of these matchups?
I'm not going to give Travis Kelce any freedom. I'm going to challenge him at the line of scrimmage. I'm going to make him divert his route. I'm not going to allow him to be predictable if Patrick Mahomes has to scramble. I'm going to make Patrick Mahomes have to sight him and then accurately deliver the ball, which he can, but I'm not going to make it easy and convenient for Travis. But when you look at the other side in the Philadelphia Eagles, their main concern is going to be Saquon Barkley, and that gives the tight end opportunities from 0 to 8 yards downfield. And so I'm still going to have the tight end for the Eagles be a viable option because of Saquon Barkley. And I know Kansas City, they have good running backs, but they don't have anybody that you have to be determined to stop. When you go back to our Super Bowl, I think Walter Payton had 22 carries for 61 yards. They were determined to stop him, but Willie Gauld had 129 yards receiving. Emery Moorhead had a big game. Kenny Marjoram had a big game. Matt Suey had a big game. So if their intentions is to take something or somebody out of the game, you got to think where else we can go with it.
All right. One last thing. At the Super Bowl this week, you had the State of the Union from Commissioner Roger Goodell. Said that they are definitely going to be looking at considering starting professional flag football leagues for both men and women. Thoughts?
You know, I saw that they were going to have the first women's flag football game at the Payton Center. The Bears released that statement.
March 8th, yes. Rockford University against Benedictine University at 6:15. It's a driving force that the Bears have been a part of. The flag football statewide has grown significantly from a 21-team high school league in 2021 to becoming the 9th state to sanction the sport in 2024. So it's an historic moment. Tanisha Wade, the Executive Vice President of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Chief Impact Officer of the Bears, saying it's an historic moment for the growth of girls flag football in the state of Illinois. Yes, any kind of football, you and I are all in.
Well, I really want to go to that game.
Me too.
Because of the historic relevance to that game. And if I'm up and moving and easy to get around, I really want to go to that game because, and I know Tanisha's going to do a great job, but I want to go and see that game because of, I think there's going to be significant importance of that game that's going to be talked about forever.
Yep. It's you can't stop it now. Flag football is going strong. So, yeah,
listen,
as much football as you could get, man, as much football.
And listen, I love the inclusion of everybody that gives everybody an outlet to play sports. And I love watching the development of, anybody playing a new sport, but I'm excited to see how, this is handled by them.
For savings and service, get more with Geico. That's going to wrap up our podcast this week. Tom? Keep healing, get strong. We'll see you on your feet shortly. That's Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please subscribe now on the Chicago Bears official app, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bear down, everybody.